Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. And Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Padavijagacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Padavijagacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavindi Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudирayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and to Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, and to Mother Saraswati, the Goddess of Learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta prayesha bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatyuttama shloke bhakti bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 8th day of September 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we're in Canto 8, Withdrawal of the Cosmic Creations. Chapter 22, Bali Mahārāja surrenders his life. Text number 10. Itam sa nishchitya pitamaho mahan agadabodho bhavatah padapadmam dhruvam prapede hi akuto bhayam janad bhita sopaksha chapanasya sattama. Okay. Itam sanish. Oh, what is this? This thing isn't working. Itam sanishcha pitamaho mahan agada bodho bhavatak pada padmam dhruvam papede yakuto bhayam janad bhita sapaksha chapanasya sattama. Okay. Itam sanishchat pitamaho mahan agada bodho bhavatak pada padmam dhruvam papede yakuto bhayam janad bhitak sapaksha chapanasya sattama. Itam sanishcha pitamaho mahan agada bodho bhavatak pada padmam dhruvam papede yakuto bhayam janad bhitak sapaksha chapanasya sattama. Chant. Itam sanishchitya pitamaho mahan agada bodho bhavatak pada padmam dhruvam papede yakuto bhayam janad bhita sapaksha chapanasya sattama. Itam sanishchitya pitamaho mahan agada bodho bhavatak pada padmam dhruvam papede yakuto bhayam janad bhita sapaksha chapanasya sattama. Anyone else? Itam sanishchitya pitamaho mahan agada bodho bhavatak pada padmam dhruvam papede yakuto bhayam janad bhita sapaksha chapanasya sattama. Anyone else want to try? Okay. Anyone online?
Itam sanishchitya pitamaho mahan
Itam sanishchitya pitamaho mahan
agada bodho bhavata pada padmam
agada bodho bhavatak pada padmam
dhruvam prapede yakuto bhayam janad
dhruvam papede yakuto bhayam janad
Vitas va pakshak shapanasya sattaman.
bhita sapaksha chapanasya sattama.
Itam sanishchitya pitamaho mahan
Itam sanishchitya pitamaho mahan
agada bodho bhavata pada padmam
agada bodho bhavatak pada padmam
dhruvam papede yakuto bhayam janad
dhruvam papede yakuto bhayam janad
bhita svapakshak shapanasya sattama.
bhita sapaksha chapanasya sattama. I have to ask, you want to try it, Hannah? Not yet. Okay, it's all right. Thank you, Vanessa. And Vijay. Itam.
You're welcome.
Because of this, as stated above, Saha, he, Prahlad Maharaj, Nishchitya, definitely deciding on this point. Pitamaha, my grandfather. Mahan, the great devotee. Agadabodha, my grandfather, who received unlimited knowledge of his devotional service. Oh, sorry. Who received unlimited knowledge because of his devotional service. Bhavataha, of your lordship. Padapadmam, the lotus feet. Dhruvam, the infallible eternal shelter. Prapede, surrendered. He, indeed. Akotak Bhahyam, completely free of fear. Janat, from ordinary common people. Bhitaha, being afraid. Swapaksha, Chapanasya, of your lordship, who killed the demons on our own side. Sattama, O best of the best. All right, let's see if this thing works. So this is Bali speaking to Vamadev. My grandfather, the best of all men, who achieved unlimited knowledge and was worshipable for everyone. Okay. Sorry, I'm having a little problem here. But I think I can do it now. Let's try again. My grandfather, the best of all men, who achieved unlimited knowledge and was worshipable for everyone, was afraid of the common men in this world. Being fully convinced of the substantiality afforded by shelter at your lotus feet, he took shelter of your lotus feet against the will of his father and demoniac friends who were killed by your own self. Okay, no purport there, so I'll just read the English to the next one. Only by providence have I been forcibly brought under your lotus feet and deprived of all my opulence. Because of the illusion created by temporary opulence, people in general who live under material conditions, facing accidental death at every moment, do not understand that this life is temporary. Only by providence have I been saved from that condition. Purport. Bali Mahārāja appreciated the actions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although all the members of the demoniac families except Prahlad Maharaj and Bali Mahārāja considered Vishnu their eternal traditional enemy. As described by Bali Mahārāja, Lord Vishnu was actually not the enemy of the family, but the best friend of the family. The principle of this friendship has already been stated. Yasyaham nagunnami hadashe tad dhanangshanai. The Lord bestows special favor upon his devotee by taking away all his material opulences. Bali Mahārāja appreciated this behavior by the Lord. Therefore he said, Daive nanitak pasabam chajita shri. It is to bring me to the right platform of eternal life that you have put me into these circumstances. Actually, everyone should fear the so-called society, friendship, and love for which he works so hard all day and night. As indicated by Bali Mahārāja by the words Janad Bhitaha, every devotee in Krishna consciousness should always be afraid of the common man engaged in pursuing material prosperity. Such a person is described as pramatta, a madman chasing the will-o'-the-wisp. Such men do not know that after a hard struggle for life, one must change his body with no certainty of what kind of body he will receive next. Those who are completely established in Krishna conscious philosophy and who therefore understand the aim of life will never take to the activities of the materialistic dog race. But if a sincere devotee somehow does fall down, the Lord corrects him and saves him from gliding down to the darkest region of hellish life. Adanta gobhi vishatam tamisram punok punascharvitacharvananam. Bhagavatam 7:5-30. The materialistic way of life is nothing but the repeated chewing of that which has already been chewed. Although there is no profit in such a life, people are enamored of it because of uncontrolled senses. Nunam pramatta kurate vikarma. Because of uncontrolled senses, people fully engage in sinful activities by which they get a body full of suffering. Bali Mahārāja appreciated how the Lord had saved him from such a bewildered life of ignorance. He therefore said that his intelligence had been stunned. Stabdhamatir nabudyate. He could not understand how the Supreme Person of Godhead favors his devotees by forcibly stopping their materialistic activities. Om jnana timirandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshu unmilitam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So this is Bali Mahārāja again and again praising. Praising the Lord for saving him from the illusion of being able to enjoy by dominating this material world. And this is the big well, if you will, of ignorance that the demons fall into. And demons in the broadest sense is anyone who is performing 99 or more % of their activities simply for their own sense gratification. Which, in the broadest sense, it takes in practically 99.99% of the people on the planet today. This is what the Kali Yuga is all about. Kali Yuga is the upsurge or the dominance of this mentality that Prabhupada refers to here when he quotes the same line from a verse from Rishabdev, Lord Rishabdev. The verse is in the 5th canto, and it starts out, Nunam pramattak kurate vikarma, yadindriya pritaya apranoti, nasadumanye yata atmanoyam asan api klesha da asadeha. So Nunam means certainly, not just matta, but pramata. Pramata, this prefix pra means very, very. It's always, increasing the meaning of the word. So nunam kudadevi karma. So those people are completely mad. If they do what? Kudadevi yet indriya pritaya apranoti. If they're simply after sense gratification. Indriya priti precisely translates as sense gratification. Apranoti. So they're aspiring for it. Apranoti nasadhu manye. He says it's not a good idea. He says, Rishabdev, this is a bad thing. Sadhu can mean different things. It can mean, of course, a learned devotee, or it can just mean very good. I remember we used to have plays in Brooklyn when I was there. The Vaikuntha Players. I don't know if you ever heard of them, but New York is famous for Broadway, and we had some aspiring Broadway actors and some actual Broadway actors joined the temple. And I remember there was one couple, Rasagya and her husband, I forget his name now, but they actually were off-Broadway actors, but still very professional. And they came and they putting on plays. There was a play. There's a picture of Prabhupada sitting in the gallery, which is the room where they would have the plays. There was a stage there also, and they had paintings on the side. And he was sitting, and the play was the kidnapping of Rukmini, And Prabhupada was just having a ball, you could see that. Devotees were looking at him, they weren't looking at the play. And he praised this actress, Rasagya, who was a very, very good actress. As she was the best, and she was just completely taken it when Prabhupada did that. So so the Prabhupada would quote these verses all the time. When the 5th canto came out, he repeatedly gave classes on the first verse of Rishabdev's teachings. Nayam deho deha bhajanga loke krishtan kaman or David bhujangye. which he's teaching his 100 sons because he's about to take sannyas. And so one of those sons is Bharat, who becomes the leader. Bharat Mahārāja, he's the king. And he later has some problem because he gets attached to the fawn, the baby deer. Who wouldn't be, the deer? Anyway, that's the whole thing. So, but he's there. And so Rishabhdev is saying here, Nayam deho deha. He starts out with, this verse starts out with the word not. Okay? Nayam deho deha bhajang niloke kashtan kaman David bhujange. Those who have taken their birth amongst human beings, in human society. Nirloke, nara. Kashtan kam, they shouldn't work hard just for sense gratification, which is after all available to the stool-eating hogs. He's not mentioning any words, Then what should we do? Well, if we're not going to work hard like that, the tapo divyam, you have to embrace transcendental austerity. Because you can't just say austerity, because look at Hiranyakashipu. Who performed a more severe austerity than him? But it wasn't divyam. It wasn't for purification in order to know God. You see, so he makes that point. Tapo divyam, that you have to, instead of working hard and trying to enjoy your senses, tapo divyam putraka, oh my son, putraka yena, perform that austerity by which, yena is instrumental, by which, yena satyam shudyet, your existence will become purified. Well, what's the advantage of that? Then he mentions, Sudya Yasmat Brahma Saukyam Tvanantam. Because then you can come to the platform of enjoying spiritual happiness, Brahma Sukha, Brahma Saukyam Tvanantam, which is endless. It doesn't end. This is the whole problem with sense gratification. I'm sure we've all noticed that you can't keep enjoying it all the time, right? This is what overeating is all about. Something's very palatable and you eat, oh, that tastes good, oh, and then you suffer, right? That's what sense gratification is all about. And the thing is, even if you don't overdo it, just leading a life of sense gratification will bring you back to to suffer birth, old age, disease, and death, and the threefold miseries. And the kind of sense gratification that's so available to now restaurants, meat eating, and everything, will probably make you lose the human form of life. So this is the critical decision: is that are we going to obey the injunction of the Vedanta Sutra, the very first sutra, which we can all memorize? It's only 3 words. Janma yasya yataha, maybe 4. So, I'm sorry, that's the second one. The first one is atato brahma jigyasa. Now this key word, jigyasa, what are you going to place your attention on and inquire about? Most people, like, I learned so much from my walks, And so I'm walking up and there's anyone who, the intersection of Cass Street and my brain isn't working today, Garnet. So there's a restaurant there, there's some trash cans there, and the unfortunate homeless people come, they're looking for cans, they can turn them in for a dime or whatever. So they empty out the trash cans, which is often filled with stuff from the restaurant. So there's food everywhere. So there's often little birds, sometimes seagulls, sometimes crows, who are trying to eat, find some nice pizza or something, what else they can find. So eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Those birds were once in the spiritual world, just like us. They're ultimately spirit souls, just like us. But because of activity they perform, they lost the human form of life, and they come down and they're living this low life. And they're conscious beings, but eventually they'll die and move up, and come back to human form of life. So the point is, now we have a human form of life. Don't waste it. Inquire into the absolute truth. That's what it says, atato brahma jigyasa. Brahma, what is Brahma? That's the first sutra, the next sutra. Janmad yasya yataha, from which everything has come. You see? Which Krishna defines himself in the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. He's saying, now that's me. This is the first verse of the Chatur Shloka Bhagavatam. There's 4 verses in the second canto that are the essence of the whole thing. And what he's saying is, before there existed all of this material world, I existed. Well, then the logical conclusion is, I'm the source of it. right? If only I existed. Aham eva asam eva agre. Nanya yat, nothing else existed. So that's Krishna. We have to be to inquire into that source of everything. And in this age, we have to be fortunate enough to come in touch with the Vaishnavas, so you don't think that the source is simply Brahman, impersonal Brahman. That's impersonalism. And that will not get us back to Godhead. So that's why Prabhupada, was so insistent on printing books, is following a spiritual master, and giving people a chance to understand the philosophy if they're a little bit inquisitive. This is what book distributors, people are a little bit interested, so they'll open the book, boom, there's the absolute truth. And if they're fortunate, they'll be really interested, and it's something they never heard before. So, so this is interesting. This verse I read, the 10th, right? Itam? Yeah. My grandfather, Prahlad Mahārāja, the best of all men, achieved unlimited knowledge and was worshipable for everyone, was afraid of the common men in this world. Now, when I read that, I said, because I'm an editor, what does it say here, He was afraid in the sense of afraid of associating, and, he wasn't afraid of his father, he was basically free of fear. But that's something that we want to be careful of, because association is everything. That's what forms your consciousness. That's why there's this wonderful ashtaka. Within the Bhagavatam, there's several ashtakas, 8 verses. And one of them is in this 3rd canto, Kapila Deva. He's just beginning his instructions to his mother, Devahuti. And he's talking about, what he says is, Prasangam madanam pasham atmanak kavayo badu. Sa esha sadasukato moksha dvaram apavatam. So, I put it into a little poem. Mundane affection keeps us tied to birth and death infernal, but love for sadhus opens wide the doors to life eternal. You see? So that's a critical choice we have. But most people don't know they have a choice. So we have to give them the choice. You can associate with materialists and material modes of nature and get conditioned in that way. And what's the result of that? Birth and death, suffering, you see? Or you can associate with sadhus. Where are the sadhus? Well, this is what Prabhupada worked so hard to do, to make sadhus, to train up people. And it explains what is a sadhu. There's a famous verse. To tikshava, because that's the next question. Okay, I accept that bad associations, so I need to associate. So who's a sadhu? To tikshava, karunika, suridak sarvadehinam. Ajata Shattabak Shanta, Sadhavak Sadhubhushana. These are the ornaments of a sadhu. You see? First is tolerance. And next is mercy. If you're going to be merciful and give people Krishna consciousness, you got to be tolerant. You can ask the book distributors. What do you think, Vijayamani? If you weren't tolerant, you'd come back after half an hour, right? So tolerance and mercy. You're doing it out of mercy, but you're tested. All right, I can see this is going to be austere because people are saying no, and some people will get angry at me. Do you get people throw things at you too? He's so potent, they just throw Lakshmi. Anyway, but it's an austerity. I tried it. I wasn't very good at it. But the point is, you can detect Shivakana. Why tolerant? Suridak Sarvadehinam. Because you see, not just human beings, but every embodied soul, you feel a kinship as your friendly. Suridak sarvadehinam. Ajata shatrava. Therefore, you have no enemies. Your enemy is never born. They may see you as an enemy, but you don't see anyone else as an enemy. And therefore, you're peaceful, shanta. Sadhavak sadhabhushana. These are the ornaments of a sadhu. Now, it's interesting, in that particular verse, Kapila Deva doesn't mention anything about bhakti. So the next verse explains how you get that way. They go together. He's saying unto me, because Kapila is an incarnation. My ananyena bhavena bhaktim kurvanti hedridham. Matkute tyakta karmanas tyakta swajana bandhava. So he says, my ananyena bhavena bhaktim. Okay, so undeviating bhakti unto me is a God. This is the quality of the sadhus, and this is how they become sadhus. Mayan bhaktim kurvanti yet vidham, very determined, unflinching devotional service. And what are the symptoms of that? Mat krite chakta karmanas. For my sake, they'll give up any activity that's deviant, that's not part of devotional service. And even if there are impediments, they'll give up relationships with their friends and family like that and become renounced. So that's that's part of the austerity and becoming a devotee. You have to always remember the importance of association. That's what this is all about, sadhu sanghastika. Because if you try to keep your old friends and be a devotee, chances are you're not, you're going to find things that you don't like in the Hare Krishnas in the ashram, and you won't want to participate. Or you can be a really powerful preacher and bring all your friends into Krishna consciousness. That's the other alternative, but that's pretty difficult. So now back to this. So this gets to this. So why was Prahlad afraid of the common men in this world? He wasn't afraid in the sense that they would hurt him, but that from the association he would be contaminated by that, and he would lose his one-pointed devotion for the Lord. That's what we should be afraid of, is bad association. He took shelter of your lotus feet against the will of his father and demonic friend. Now talk about the tikshava. If Prahlad Mahārāja, could anyone be more tolerant than him? What he went through for simply maintaining that devotion to the Lord. Father was. It's amazing, because this pastime, with Vamanadev and Shukracharya and Bali, as I mentioned, I think one of the classes I gave, that they're switching off in their identities. Like Bali, here's the leader of the demons. They conquered the demigods and took over their planets. He's a demon, right? But no, he's really a devotee inside. And when the circumstances come out, he becomes a Mahajan by his activity of giving everything and being appreciative of having taken all of his wealth, which is the whole universe, having been taken away. Says thank you very much, because it was an impediment. We learn that actually great wealth and all these attachments, it's a big albatross around your neck, to have that. And only if you're really serious about engaging it in Krishna's service. I know Ambarish personally, our own Ambarish Das. And he was a perfect example. He was main heir of the Ford fortune, And but he met Prabhupada, I think, in Hawaii. It was the hippie days. I think it was the early 70s, which is the same as the 60s. So he was, he was looking, and Prabhupada just charmed him, and brought and made him a devotee, and then he was able to engage that wealth. And the Detroit temple he bought first. It's interesting, because he didn't spend all the money on it. There was also a very important contribution from Lekha Shravanti, who was the daughter of Walter Reuther, whose name probably doesn't mean much to you, but he was the pioneer of the Auto Workers Union. He was a big union organizer. So you have the descendant of Ford, who's the big employer, the boss, and the descendant of the Auto Worker Union, and they both chipped in and they bought this wonderful Detroit temple. And then later so much, of course now we know the TOVP, but I'm telling you, in the early 80s, ISKCON was going through some trouble because Prabhupada disappeared, and then the 11 gurus, they were zonal acharyas, which is actually a bogus idea. That if you joined in this room, then you have to take initiation from this guru. No, that was bogus. Anyway, it was a lot of turmoil, and Prabhupada's samadhis weren't being built. I say samadhis because samadhi tomb is when a great acharya disappears, and you don't burn the body because generally there's sannyasis and everything. So you inter the body, and above that you build a nice memorial. You see. So the one in Vrindavan wasn't being built. The GBC, the gurus and everything, they weren't on the same page about that, which is an offense, actually. So Ambarish, he took it upon himself to build the one in Mayapur. There's also Mayapur. It's called the Pushpa Samadhi, where you take the flowers and garlands that the devotee was wearing, and that becomes sacred, and you take those and you bury them. The actual body is buried in the other Samadhi in Vrindavan. So I happened to be there right after Prabhupada disappeared in Vrindavan. That's the whole story. And it was a big ceremony, and then we went and took those flowers to Mayapur. And we buried them in the field where they were going to build the thing. But that wasn't being built either, so I'll build it. He built it himself. I don't know, $10 million, $13 million. He probably knows. It's a beautiful building, you know. And there's a certain Italian, isn't it, flavor to it? Because the architect, Matsya, it reminds you of the Vatican. That's all I can say. But it's a beautiful thing. So he was, you know, that was millions of dollars. And this TFAP is even more, you know, for years and years, you know. So that's an example of someone who is using his wealth properly and, you know, doing so much service with it. So that's the idea. So anyway, Rishabdev, I'm focusing on him because he's also the one who spoke this Nunam Pramatta Kuradevi Karma verse. So this key verse that Prabhupada spoke at least 11 times, 10 or 11 times, wherever he went in India, he would give the lecture on that verse. So what it says is, and it's a lesson for all of us, for all humanity. He's teaching his sons. Nayam deho deha bhajang niloke, one who has taken his birth as a human being. Kashtan kaman ardate vidbhajani. They do not deserve to work very hard for sense gratification like the hogs, you know, just for miserable sense gratification. Rather, you should perform divine penance or austerity. What's the event? Purify your existence so you can come to the point of enjoying unending Brahman happiness, with pleasure in devotional service. You ultimately get a spiritual body which doesn't decay and which is simply perfectly suited to serve Krishna in your special rasa that you have. You know, this is the ideal. And you go back home, back to Godhead, and resume what we left countless eons ago. So what's a better deal? You know, work hard for this fleeting sense gratification. And in my favorite verse, I practically quote it every class, Yehi sangsparjaja boga dukkha yonaya evate ajandavanta konteya nateshu ramate buddha. Buddhi means if you're intelligent, then you should do this. And, O son of Kunti, this is Krishna speaking in Gita. Yehi sangsparjaja boga. Ja means the born out of the touch of the senses with the sense objects. In other words, sense gratification. That boga, that enjoyment, is the source of all misery. Yehi boga dukkha yoni. Dukkha yoni. And the wise do not take their pleasure there. It is the source of all misery and has a beginning and an end, and so the wise don't delight in it. So, but we, as living entities, we're part and parcel of Krishna. We want to enjoy. So how can we enjoy in a wholesome way that doesn't lead to more suffering? Devotional service. The point is that Rishabdev in that verse, he's saying, here's your alternatives. You can more or less descend down to the hoggish platform of simply, you know, trying for sense gratification, or you can embrace divine austerity. You know, tapo divyam. O sons, by which yena sattvam shuddhe, your existence will become purified, and you will move toward the platform of being able to enjoy unending spiritual happiness. Now, it all depends on faith, if you're going to take this, because at the beginning it's going to be austere. You know, there's going to be some things you have to, you know, endure. But in Bhakti Yoga, especially Lord Chaitanya's branch of Bhakti Yoga, there are austerities, but it's not like the austerities that ordinary sense gratifiers have to undergo. And it's certainly not like the austerities that the yogis undergo in order to get the powers or the impersonalists undergo. There's a nice verse that the Prabhupada would often quote. This is spoken by the demigods when they're in Kansa's dungeon. They're hiding there and they're glorifying Krishna, who they know is going to take birth. You know, so So one of the verses that Prabhupada always quotes from there, first they're praising the devotees, and then they speak this verse, Ye and ye adavindaksha bimuktamaninas, tvayasta bhava avishuddha buddhiya, aduha kritrena param padang tatak patantyadho anadvita yushmadangriha. Said, besides these devotees, there are others, O lotus-eyed Lord, adavindaksha vimuktamaninas, who think that they're liberated, vimuktamaninas, but they're not. Tvayasta bhava avishuddha buddhiya, their intelligence is not purified. So with this word kritrena, I bring this up all the time. Does everyone know what an onomatopoeia is? Does anyone know what an onomatopoeia is? An onomatopoeia is a word that means what it sounds like. You know? Splash. I give the example. Boom. You know? I mean, you come up with your own list. English has a lot of them. Sanskrit has a lot of them too. And one of them is this word, kritrena. This is a word that means very difficult austerities. Kritrena, kritrena. Can you hear it? You know, it's not like you know, it's like Krishna's enjoying, you know, in the forest. So by severe austerities, because you just imagine. I mean, we're also trying to give up sense gratification and become more and more enthralled and involved in devotional service. But the thing is, the giving up this lower sense gratification happens by getting the higher taste. Right in the Bhagavad Gita it says that, right? When you get the higher taste, then you can easily give it up. So, but the impersonalists, they don't have that higher taste. They're just, so it's much more difficult to give up, you know, sense. That's all they know, you know. But they know this austerity, so they go through this, you know. But it doesn't work. So, So these demigods, they're saying, they're praying to Krishna, they say, some few, aruha kritrena padam padam. Padam padam means they can rise up to the Brahman platform, you know, and they, okay, liberated, no more birth in there. But then, padam padam patantyadho, because it's, all I can say is it's supremely boring. I mean, here we are, there's so many varieties, you know, there's kirtans, there's festivals, there's different kinds of prasadam service to do, association, Krishna's Leela, right? It's certainly a great variety of ways in which you can express your Krishna consciousness. But for them, it's all negativity. It's all liberation. Liberation is really a negative thing. Even it said mukti kama. Remember, Prahlad uses that phrase, right? Prayena deva munayo svava mukti kama. In his prayers to Hiranyakashipu, this is a very important verse, and the one before it is for the Sankirtan movement. It says prayena means for the most part, Deva Muniyo Swavamukti Kama Maunam Churandi. These transcendentalists, they're after their own liberation, alone. And it's a kind of lust. This is, the Sridhar Swami mentions that also in the beginning of the Bhagavatam. Remember the second verse, Dharma Projita Kaitavotra? In this book, all cheating religions are kicked out. And Prabhupada points out that in his commentary, and he's the original commentator, Sridhar Swami says, and the desire just for one's own liberation is also a type of lust. It just means I want to be free from all suffering, birth, old age, disease, and death. So Prahlad, he criticizes that. He says, for the most part, these transcendentalists are like that, Swavamukti Kama. And for that end, Maunam Chadanti, they wander silently. You know, this is the origin of the word muni, you know, silent, maunam chadanti. But they don't vijane where there's no people. They go to the Himalayas or some jungle, you know, because they don't want to be distracted, you know, bothered. Vijane, no people. Maunam chadanti vijane, naparartha nishta, not at all determined to help others. You see? No paradukkha dukhi for them, you know. Paradukkha, I feel your pain, you know, not for them. So Prahlad says, I'm not like that. Naparartha nishta. Prayena deva munayo svamukti kama maunam chadanti vijane naparartha nishta. Naitan vihaya kripanan. I can't give up these creepers, these kripanas, these misers, you know, people who don't know anything about you. Naitan kriha kripana vimamuksha eko, simply wanting my liberation alone, because nanya turati sharanam brahmato napashe. I don't see any other shelter for them but you, my Lord, and I have to give them you. That's the implication. That's the determination of the preacher. I'd like to just sit down in Vrindavan, and chant and hear and everything. But my spiritual master, if you're coming in the line of Lord Chaitanya, and has ordered me to try to help them, and I feel the urge to do that also. This is the nature of a Vaishnava, is that they're feeling others' pain and they want everyone to be happy, so therefore they have to try to give them Krishna consciousness. So that's what it's all about here. And so when it says here that Prahlad was afraid of the common men in this world, in the sense of simply associating with them, you see, not for preaching, but just to be influenced by them. That's what this says, be afraid. Being fully convinced of the substantiality afforded by the shelter of your lotus feet, he took shelter of your lotus feet against the will of his father and demonic friends who were killed by your own self. So this is Bali speaking, and he's taking inspiration here. This is his line. He's identifying with Prahlad as what he wants to do now. In other words, he's kind of disappointed in himself that he was a demon for so long. He doesn't want to be a demon anymore. So this is Vamanadev's mercy. And this is how we're supposed to see it. That's that famous verse, Tate nukampam susamikshimano. This is one of Brahma's prayers in the 14th chant. Very famous. Tate anukampam susamikshimano, to see as mercy. Bunjana evatnukutam vipakam. Whatever happens to us, if it's something painful, we should know it's a result of our own activities. You see? And Krishna is minimizing it. I was introduced to this idea early on in my little career in Brooklyn, 73, because everyone put in their stint in the kitchen. We had a lot of devotees and they would cut vegetables and everything, And inevitably, just like there's a little first aid kit right near the kitchen in case someone gets a cut, right? So, you eventually get a little cut here and there. So you say, they were, even that day, they were telling you, they didn't quote any verse or anything. Well, you should know, it could have been much worse, but Krishna just gave you a cut. You had maybe been, scheduled to lose a finger, and you just got a little cut. So you should thank Krishna for that. And that's in that same mood of this verse. Tatte nukampam susamikshimano, bunjana evatnukam. I did it. Don't blame Krishna. Whatever's negative has happened, it's a result of, and he's just minimizing. It could be so much worse, you see. So, vidvag vapurbe vidadhan namaste, with one's heart and soul, one should continue offering obeisance to him and glorifying the Lord. And if you maintain this kind of positive view toward the Lord, and what to speak of if you get some facility to preach. Oh, thank you, Krishna, you're giving me a chance to serve you better. Right, you come in. I remember I like to get on YouTube, and sometimes you listen to Following Srila Prabhupada. It's a wonderful series that was put together by Yadabur many years ago. And he took a lot of the, if not all of the available video of Prabhupada, and he went and found the devotees. It was early on, so a lot of them are still with us. And he interviewed them, and they would narrate, oh, this is happening here, and very fascinating. So this was like, I think, the first Rath Yatra in London. The big one where there's a headline, these chariots, they're rivaling some famous English, was it? Yeah, Nelson column. Thank you, Maharaj. And Prabhupada was very pleased with that. So it turns out that there was a devotee who later became a Swami, Mahavishnu Swami, the English Mahavishnu. And he had gotten an inheritance, from one of his aunts or uncles or something died. And he used the whole thing to help put on that Rath Yatra. And Prabhupada had heard about it, he said, oh, he spent it very wisely. He did a very, very good idea. So that's the choice we have to make. We all have certain facilities, even senses. Are we going to use these senses in the service of the master of the senses, Rishikesh, or are we going to try to enjoy them? Well, we know. See, the whole thing is to get knowledge and intelligence. I know that if I just try to enjoy these senses, then it'll end up in suffering, especially birth, old age, disease, and death. You see. But now I'm seeing, and I have faith because these are nice devotees, and I have faith in my guru, and I'm reading about the alternative, that if I just direct that energy, of cooking or working, whatever I may be able to do, for the service of Krishna, then the end result will be that I can go back to Godhead and have a form that's eternal, and I'll forever enjoy serving Krishna. That's the difference. Now it takes faith, because you can't immediately see that that's true, you see. But that's the all important advantage of getting the association of a realized soul, even through the medium, like the books and that to say, well, this is a real thing. This is not just some pipe dream. Someone is trying to sell me to exploit me, and that's the invaluable advantage of being under the influence and protection of Srila Prabhupada and his sincere followers. That is real. That God is real. And so I remember I just got a request. One devotee wrote a book in I think he's in Alatra, and he's trying to follow Prabhupada's order of fighting against the scientists that life comes from matter. So he did this research. It was fascinating, and because science keeps learning more and more. They keep discovering more and more about the world. So what's in the cell? How does the cell work? Human cells. In other words, they're looking for how life started. So I remember when I grew up, in the 50s and 60s, and it was just like these simple one-celled organisms. Right? We even got to look in the microscope. Oh, there's a paramecium. Wasn't there one of them? An amoeba, right, or something. So, but it turns out there's no such thing as a simple one-cell organism. Sadhaputta, we have this Origins magazine, which has been updated, and there's an article in there about how these one-cell organisms, or any single cell, even if it's not an organism all of itself, is more complicated than New York City. What? I know New York City. I mean, there's a lot of company. But he was going on how, there's RNA and DNA, and there's instructions for how things are going to go on in the cell, in the RNA and DNA. And as soon as you have some instructions that are that's a mind, that's an intelligence that produces those instructions. It's not something that happened out by chance, even a million billion years. You can't get some instructions that are, designed to produce something in it. Anyway, there's and what to speak of that? I remember, and you may know about these, it became famous, that there are some kids who were born who say, "Oh, you're not my mother. My mother was in this other." As soon as they can speak, And they go to the place, right? If it's in India, maybe the town may be 20 miles away or less, and they investigate. Sure enough, there's somebody named like that, and in other words, it's confirmed. There was this guy, I'm sure he's dead by now, Ian Stevenson, who was a professor, psychologist in a university somewhere in the South, I think. And he actually went there in India and did some research on this whole thing of remembering past lives. And even now on YouTube, you can key it in. I remember there was this one kid, he's American, but many of them are Indian somehow because I don't know. But he was an American kid, and he was just said, "No, I was a pilot flying this plane in World War II, and it went down, And sure enough, they did the investigation, and there was a pilot with that name who died. So in other words, there is some empirical evidence for it as well, but we accept the Shastra, of course. But you can get so much involved. I mean, we know, 99.99% of the people, once you commit yourself to the materialistic way of life and that idea, then that becomes your lens that you see everything. You see a lot yourself in that way, and this is a very strong conditioning, and it's hard to get over that. But the fortunate souls who come in touch with this philosophy when we're still searching, and we're not committed and we haven't gone down the rabbit hole, we can see the reality of it. And, all these years, I mean, I've been doing this for over 50 years and chanting this same mantra, and it doesn't like it ever gets boring. It's always ever fresh. You know, and so I'm so, you know, I can't express my gratitude to Prabhupada enough for somehow entering my life the way he did and inducing me to give everything up. This is a big thing, you know. You have to, even if you're a household, you have to give up so many things that you would otherwise do, right? I mean, there is austerity involved. There's no question about it. But the payback or the payoff is infinitely greater than giving it up. And the wonderful thing is that if you get a taste for Krishna consciousness and serving and being with devotees, and I could just say in my own life for nectar shlokas, which can, you know, really fix your mind on Krishna. I'll share a few with you. Then you can get into the mood of Yamunacharya, you know, that even to think about sense gratification is just abominable. You're not, it's not like you're attracted to it anymore. In other words, renunciation becomes natural. And I always point out, you know, some of you here haven't heard this before, that I was around when McDonald's came out. That's how old I am. Early 60s, I was part of a bowling league. I was probably about 12, 15 years old. And suddenly, right near the bowling alley where we were, there was this place selling hamburgers and French fries and everything, you know. All right, you know, before we do bowling, we'll go there for the snack and like that. So I got a taste for that, you know. So now I live across the street from McDonald's, just a few blocks from here, seriously. And I can honestly say, right before the deities, there is not the slightest desire for me to go over there and have a cheeseburger and no, thank you. You know? God. Never in a million years, you know. So that's the mercy of the Lord. You know, what is that verse? Vishayava nivartate nidahara siddhehinak rasavajam rasabhyasya param drishva navartate. That you can, you know, if you're addicted to something, you know, you can give it up by force, you know, or so your best friend drags you to the place where, you know, or AA they have up here. And, but you still have a desire for it. If you're walking past a bar, you know, okay, I've been on the wagon now for 6 months, I'm good. But I have some friends in there, you know, there'll be no harm. I'll just go in there and sit with them. I'm not going to have a drink, you know. Next thing you know, you had 4 or 5 drinks. Oh, you know, you're fall off the wagon. Because it's still the taste is there. But if you get the higher taste, you remain fixed, you know, never in a million years. So that's part of Krishna's mercy. The more that you get a taste for Krishna consciousness, the less that you have a taste for material consciousness. And ultimately, you know, when we leave this body, we want to have 100% desire to serve Krishna and 0 desire to serve Maya, you know. So this is a wonderful, I think we can see, it's obvious that Bali Mahārāja's actual nature has come out here. You know, him being a demon and that thing wasn't really what he wants to do. And so this whole experience of having everything taken away by Vamanadev, he sees as a great favor. He says, thank you so much, you know. And he doesn't mind, I mean, just see it. Not only did he do it, you know, but then he got arrested, and they're going to put him down into Rasatala, you know, which is kind of a hellish planet. But Vamanadev said, don't worry, I'll be down there too, you know, as your doorman. So I don't know how many thousands of years he's doing that, but then he becomes Indra. He becomes the next Indra, you know, and the next one Vantara from this one, and so you know, he becomes that which he conquered, right? Because he conquered Indra and the things. So it's all very fascinating and a wonderfully, I find it enlightening and enlivening pastime. Only by providence have I forcibly been brought under your lotus feet. Okay, I think that's the next verse. No? Anyway. Yeah, that's one we read also. Only by providence have I brought under your lotus feet. And deprived of all my opulence. Because of the illusion created by temporary opulence, people in general who live under material conditions, facing accidental death at every moment, don't understand that this life is temporary. Only by providence have I been saved from that condition. So this is the full beauty of Bali's devotional personality coming out. And he becomes, and is to this very day, one of the Mahajans. So I'm sorry I've gone kind of over here, but is there any discussion or questions on these points? Okay.
You mentioned the example of the Mataji Rasakya, right?
Yes, the actors.
Yeah. Can you recollect if there are any other examples like that in the time of Srila Prabhupada, or any instructions about acting? Because it's a wonderful service that devotees can do.
Yeah, I mean, wherever there were devotees who had some experience, he encouraged them to put on. I think in England there were some actors, but this Vaikuntha players, they were famous, and they in the opening of Krishna Balaram Temple, we put on a play. I'm telling you, I was part of that Vaikuntha players, not as a player, but as a flute player, as a musician trying to give appropriate music. I would be in the wings. They couldn't see me, and I would do like that. I did have one part though. What is that? The pastimes where Krishna, he kills Poundraka and the king of Kashi, I think, at the same time, and then he throws the head of the king of Kashi into Kashi. It's a big thing. So then there's the idea that, all right, we have to have vengeance. So there's some priests, some demonic priests. Okay, we're going to invoke a demon who's going to go and burn Dwarka. So I was the demonic priest, and we Om Namo Dakshinagni. Agni is fire. That's a fiery demon. Om, and we had an unabridged dictionary. Om Namo Dakshinagni. Om Namo Dakshinagni. And with this devotee who was hidden in the stage, and he comes out and he runs into the audience, and the audience freaks out. The devotees, I remember that distinctly. But yeah, I mean, Prabhupada, he himself had been in a play when he was a child. I don't know how old he was, but he was putting in the role of Advaita Acharya, and he says he was so effective in that role that when the play was over, he looked in the audience and everyone was crying because it was. During the play, they were silent, so he didn't know if he did okay. But it was very effective, because this is in our line. Lord Chaitanya was in plays, I mean, he was also put in a play, and it's a tremendous meditation to put on a play with Krishna Lila, and. So, I mean, they do it here on Janmashtami. The kids will put one on, When we had a bunch of brahmacharis here, we also had plays that they were doing. And it's definitely part of our tradition. All right. Vijay, any question? He's in trance.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Anything today?
Yes, I just want... Sorry?
I said anything today from you, question-wise.
Yes, I have a question. How do you explain that if I am like Bali Mahārāja he was afraid of the common man in this world? So what about the book distributors? If they're afraid of the common man in this world, how is it that they're going to distribute the books? No one is going out of the temple because they're afraid of them. How do you explain that?
I tried to explain it. Let me try it again. He's afraid of associating with them. And Prabhupada said, well, because he said, well, okay, we're going out. This is a lecture I've heard. We're going out and meeting all these people in books, but we're not associating with them. Meaning we're not getting them, listening to them and getting into their mood. We're rather trying to engage them in Krishna consciousness. So doesn't count as bad association. That accounts as giving our good association. But Prahlad was afraid of being in an association which would affect him. You know, that it would. So in that sense, he was afraid. I admit, when I first read this, I was puzzled also. But this Prahlad, who wasn't afraid of Hiranyakashipu, who went through so much of that, you know, he show that.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So afraid means that we have to be on guard, not to allow the material energy or material association to affect us. That's what the afraid means. It doesn't mean fearful in say, fear and trembling and, you know, becoming dysfunctional. But it means that understanding the power of Maya, and that we always have to be on guard, not to let Maya to infect us, and so it become attracted and to associate with non-devotees. Is that Lord Chaitanya gives the definition of a devotee. Asat sangha tyaga he Vaishnava achar. To give up the sangha association with the asat. Now, as you say, well, what about going out and preaching? You're not actually associating. You're giving them your association. That's why we're not supposed to enter into the arguments with the demons and non-devotees about Krishna consciousness, because inevitably they'll be blaspheming. You see, you just what is the intermediate devotee? Ishwareta radideshu balisheshu dusachita prema maitri kipopeksha yakaroti samadhyama. Probably want us to come to this part of madhyama adhikari. So there's four things mentioned: Ishwar, the Lord, and Adineshu, those who are related to the Lord, the devotees. Bali Sheshu, the innocent, those who are not out and out demons, but they're innocent souls who can be affected by, can be interested in Krishna consciousness. And Vishatsu, the envious. So there's four different recommendations for how to relate to each. With the Ishvara, we try to develop love. You see? So prema, maitri, friendship with the devotees. You see? Kripa, mercy for the innocent, those who are a little receptive, who can be influenced in Krishna. And Vishatsu, the envious, to ignore them, to get away from them. And that's the motto for how to be in the spiritual material world and to be engaged in preaching. To try to find those souls who are innocent, Bali Sheshu, who are somewhat receptive, and will take a book or take an invitation or take some prasadam, or, that's the whole idea. That's who we were when we came. We were receptive to. I was certainly receptive to prasadam. Anyone will go into that story.
Me too. Yes.
Who wasn't?
Thank you.
Okay.
As to be expected, a very beautiful answer to my question. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Okay, we have to adjourn. I'm way over time now. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.